Welcome to One-on-One with the Expert series. This series is to touch base with experts in the field of mental health to gain practical knowledge on how we can best look after our own mental health and the mental health of our closest friends and family. I'm Luke Lettet, Wellbeing Counsellor at Buckley Park College, and I'm joined today with a very special guest. Her name's Lynne McCall. Lynne McCall's got so many different and extensive training and background, so I thought I'll just read it out to you and so you get an understanding of what I'm talking about here. She's got a graduate diploma in psychology. She's got a graduate diploma in education. She's a Bachelor of Health Science, qualified trainer in youth mental health first aid, advanced diploma in homeopathy, advanced diploma in health science, advanced diploma in clinical nutrition, which essentially is working with diet and herbs and supplements, advanced diploma of applied physiology. And she's got so many hours in trainings, therapies of very different modalities across the board, which are essentially ACT therapy, EMDR, hypnotherapy, meditation, or nearly said mediation, relaxation massage, solution-focused brief therapy, CBT therapy. She works really well with trauma recovery clientele, and one big area that she's helped a lot of the kids at Buckley Park with, and that's learning difficulties we will discuss today. Lynne combines all this training into therapy called applied psychophysiology. And I'd like to, with all that, because there's so much there, I'd like to welcome Lynne McCall. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for that introduction, Luke.
It's huge. I was planning to, try and remember it all, but no chance. No chance.
That's all right. I'm just a nerd.
I love it. One big area that I'd really love to talk to you about was learning difficulties. And so many schools, so many young people experience these, and then what do we do with them? So I thought I'd get your understanding about what is a learning difficulty.
Learning difficulties are essentially the inability to process information. It's when you break it down, it's really quite simple. And what type of learning difficulty a child has depends on what part of the brain has experienced the difficulty in processing the information. So it could be in the visual part of the brain, in which case they're going to have difficulty reading or perceiving long distance sight, so they can't read the blackboard. It's going to have, also occurs in the auditory channels, where people can't hear instructions, they can't follow instructions, and they can't interpret what it is that they are processing visually. So they can't understand what it is that they're reading. It could be spatial, where they can't manage to have people around them or noise around them in the classroom, or it could be multisensory, and then it results in behaviour like ADHD. They can't process the different senses coming into their body from all directions.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see that. I think that one question I'd really love to know is, are they permanent?
No, they're not permanent. Well, from the conventional practitioner's point of view, they would see them as very difficult to shift. From my point of view, the way that I view them is that they are simply an electrical circuit in the body that needs to be plugged back in, a little bit like a fuse is blown in the system, and my job is to go and plug the fuse back in. So from my point of view, it doesn't really matter what the type of learning disorder is or where it occurs. If the process is being caused electrically, caused through normal electrical nerve transmission problems, then we can work with it.
Yeah, that's really cool. And having seen in action, I really love that. And there's so many different labels that people like to put onto these learning difficulties. I guess it's to make a sense of them. I don't understand it personally, but I guess what are some of the labels that we would expect to hear and be put on those sort of learning difficulties?
The first thing that teachers will report is that the kids can't read, or they don't listen, or they can't follow instructions. These are the normal things that are put on reports, that they don't pay attention, that they don't seem to get it. But and when they get referred off into specialists, they go into the more formal diagnosis of dyslexia, dysnomia. Dyslexia is can't see properly, they switch things around. Dysnomia is you can't calculate, you can't do maths. Dysgraphia is you can't make the handwriting, speed or tidiness work for you. It can be talked of as auditory or language processing disorders, of visual and auditory perception disorders, or of motor disorders. And it doesn't really matter what they're called, they all indicate that there is a circuit in the brain that is not connecting and not processing the data correctly.
Yeah, okay. And so how would young people experience those type of learning difficulties?
The first thing young people become aware of is somehow they're different to the other children. It can start as young as kindergarten, where they become aware that they're different to the other children. They can see other children can stack blocks neatly and they can't do that. The teachers will observe that they're not able to stay still. And going up into primary school, the kids aren't able to keep up with the dictation. They can't keep up with the spelling. They get spelling wrong. So the first thing people around them and the children are going to experience is a sense that they are different, and they're going to start to judge themselves as being less than. And this is where the critical danger comes, because from here on in, it becomes a compounding problem. They have the disorder and then they have the perception of themselves in relation to the disorder. And this is where the behavioural problems will begin. Because this is highly involved with a section of the human processing called the seeking mechanism, where we go out and look for new experiences and new adventures, when that seeking mechanism is not able to be completed, the emotional response is frustration. And this is the first thing you're going to observe in a learning disabled child, is a frustration. The trouble for most people is that they don't see when that occurs, because frustration can be registered in the child's brain in a couple of seconds, and it leads them to reach a conclusion, I'm never going to be able to do this. And that's then what starts the pathway into increased learning difficulties.
Mm. Yeah, really interesting. So I guess as a parent, and me being a parent too, I'm wondering what sort of patterns of behavior can we identify as an indicator of our young person, or even a young person themselves, to identify in themselves, what that they have a learning difficulty, that it's occurring in them, and that maybe they need to seek help.
The first thing you're going to observe is frustration. They're frustrated with the work, they're frustrated with themselves, they're frustrated with their school, they're frustrated with their teacher. It'll start to come out as, I don't like this, I hate this. It will then progress on to anger. I really hate this, I'm not going to do this, you can't make me do this. After that will come the sadness, the despair. I don't know what to do, there's something wrong with me. And then you'll start to get the real aggression as the parents insist that they go back into the environment, and the teachers insist that they try again to do the work. And they sense that it doesn't matter how hard they try, they're not going to be able to succeed at this. This is when the real rage patterns start. And this is where the beginning of the behavioural disorders begin. Most behavioural disorders, in my experience, have their beginnings in a learning difficulty to start off with. How bad the behaviours get and how big the labels that go on the child depend on how frustrated they are. And the frustration is proportional to their innate ability to do the work and the level at which they're currently able to achieve. And the gap between their ability and the level that they're able to achieve is the degree of frustration that you'll experience in a child. So a child with a mild learning difficulty is going to be angry and frustrated. A child with a major learning difficulty is going to have OCD or violence disorders.
And so these are the types of, I guess, behaviors we would see.
Yeah. The first thing you're going to see is ADHD. I can't pay attention. I'm not going to do this. The next thing you're going to see is ODD. I'm not going to do what you tell me. I'm going to do the complete opposite. The next thing you're going to see is aggressive disorders or depression. They're going the way where they believe that they are at fault, they're going to go for anxiety, they're going to go to depression. If they believe that somebody else is at fault, they're going to go for aggression or violence. So it depends on which way the child thinks, whether they're going to blame themselves and go into internal process or blame others and go into external process, what kind of behavioural difficulty they will exhibit. At the core, the frustrating thing for me is at the core, there is a learning disability that can be solved.
Yeah, that's really true, yes, because when we see the education system, when we see the adults around these young people, we tend to notice that they like to label that sort of behavior without noticing that there is a learning difficulty. And I wondered if you could just talk us through some of the labels that adults, especially around those young people, like to throw on those types of behaviors.
You mean learning difficulty labels or behavioural labels?
Behavioral labels.
Well, the behavioural label, let's take the internally processed behavioural label. Anxiety is a state where there is a fear of the future. So a fear of the future means what happens if I can't do my writing? What happens if I can't sit that test? What happens if I don't do that SAC? What happens if I can't pass the exam? So anxiety is just a fear of the what ifs that are out there. When the anxiety gets so high that you have no ability to go anywhere, you go into panic disorder and you run around like a headless chook. The children will run away from home. They'll do anything. They'll create any kind of chaotic behaviour so they don't have to go back to that anxiety process. When all of that fails, or if they don't have that fight in them to go into panic, they will then go into depression where they stop the pleasure circuits in their body because nothing matters anymore, because I'm never going to be able to get it right. So depression is the nothing matters anymore. So it means that there is no relevance to the past. The past doesn't matter. So anxiety is fear of the future. Depression is fear of the past. Panic is fear of the now.
Yeah. And I guess
that's one of the ways they go.
Yeah, so really what I'd love to know more about, I'm sure that some of the parents have even called into school and we've had conversations with them. I'd really love to know and give them some feedback on what are some of the everyday strategies that that they can do and implement, and even the young people can implement to manage their learning difficulties.
All right, well, this is where we get into the little bit more complicated brain areas. One of the really important parts of the brain that causes or is involved in learning difficulties is a part of the brain called the corpus callosum, which hooks the left side of the brain to the right side of the brain. The corpus callosum is either turned on or it's turned off. When it's turned on, we look like we're rational human beings. But when it's turned off, we revert to the absolute most childish behaviours that we can go to. So this will be screaming at your mother, screaming at your child. And this is not just something associated with childhood difficulties. This is adults do this as well. Adults manifest the corpus callosum disintegration as road rage, or emotionally violent language in the relationships. Children experience this as temper tantrums. They will just throw temper tantrums, pick fights with anybody, and that's an indication that the corpus callosum has stopped integrating. When the corpus callosum stopped integrating, the only pathway out of that is to stop the sensory stimulus going into the body, and the only way to do that is to give the child time out. So if in a learning difficulty situation they've lost all ability to think, I can't do this, I'm not going to do this at all, if they've lost all ability to think, take a deep breath, take some time out, go for a 2-minute walk around the classroom, go for a little bit of a break outside with the understanding that you're going to come back and we will try again. So less pressure is the most appropriate thing, but not no pressure.
Yeah. I guess when we see across the board in society in general, we tend to notice that when those types of behaviors start to come out, we as adults, parents, teachers, whatever is around us, coaches, we tend to go more into not time out, we tend to go more into punishment, which exasperates things and just blows things up. I guess this is really the message you're giving us here, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm getting that us as adults kind of need to model that sort of behavior. Would that be right?
What parents and teachers tend to do is say two things to the kids. They press harder or they punish. Neither of those things work with a learning disabled kid. The child is already trying as hard as it can, and it's coming right up against the brick wall of where the data does not process in the brain itself. Pressing harder just makes it bang its head harder against the brick wall. So that's not going to work. You're going to get an eruption of pain, literal pain, from trying to get through that mental blockage. The punishment is like trying to tell a kid with a broken leg, get up and run the marathon. It just doesn't work. The kid is already in pain. What parents and teachers have to do is allow themselves to understand that the child is trying as hard as they can, despite the behaviour that they're demonstrating resisting. It's difficult to swallow your tongue. It's difficult to change direction. It's difficult to reorient the child, but time out first and then a change of direction. Now, this requires the parents and the teachers to think differently about how they present the information that they want the children to learn. They have to reframe the whole dynamic of the teaching, the lesson they want to teach, in terms of how is this going to benefit you? How can I make you want to learn this stuff so much that you're prepared to overcome the barrier to learning? How can we get you to go around it by using sound, by using song, by using visuals, by using YouTube? How can we go around the blockage that you have to get you to learn what it is that you need to learn? But the first thing you have to do is get the kid to understand what's in it for them. Why would they want to put the time and effort into learning this stuff? How is it going to benefit them? And it cannot be some pie in the sky, you'll get a better job in future, or you're not going to get into trouble now. It has to be, okay, why would you learn vectors in Form 4, Year 10? Why would you learn vectors? Because if you want to ride a bike and you want to drive a car, vectors is going to help you do that. And all of a sudden, there's a reason for the kid to try to do their best to get around the blockage.
Yeah, that's really important. I think I really love that advice, and it really allows the young people to buy into their own learning.
Absolutely, absolutely. You cannot force a learning disabled kid to learn the same as you can't force a broken-legged kid to run a marathon.
Yeah. Wow. Massive insights into this interview. Thank you so much, Lynne. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy lady, so we won't take up any more. Thank you so much for spending time and sharing some of your insights with our community.
You're more than welcome.
I really appreciate it. You take care.
Okay, thanks.
To find out more about the amazing work Lynne McCall does, check out the contact details on your screen now. If you would like some assistance with this process, reach out to the Wellbeing team and we can walk you through this step by step for your individual circumstances, helping you overcome some of the hurdles and roadblocks that may be in place blocking you from your potential. Take care and be safe.